The Voting Rights Act is important for one thing. For me personally, I was coming out of high school when that Voting Rights Act was passed a year after the Civil Rights Act, and it changed the lives of Black folks and the rest of Americans. And the Voting Rights Act was necessary because the Jim Crow regime had virtually taken away the right to vote for Black folks across the South. And it was a very important decision the Supreme Court made a few years ago by taking away the right to pre-clearance from that act. That's an important word. What it means is that the folks in the affected states, mainly the old Confederate states, were not able to make changes in any of their voting laws and regulations without pre-clearance by the courts. By lifting that, Justice Roberts' court, that any future complaints would have to wait until after an election, not before an election. And Justice Roberts said that he thought after almost a century, there was enough reform, enough changes had come about in race relations that we didn't need it anymore.
Chief Justice John Roberts, writing for the 5-member majority, said the law originally distinguished between states that had used barriers to minority voting and had low voter turnout and those that had not. But he wrote, "Today, the nation is no longer divided along those lines, yet the Voting Rights Act continues to treat it as if it were."
And that's really a big bone of contention that has motivated a lot of folks to push for restoring that pre-clearance provision in the law. And that's what the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which he was instrumental in getting that passed, Selma and those protests in the South were all about voting rights. So that's a big reason why his name is on the bill.
Now, is your argument that actually we are slipping backwards in terms of the ability of Black Americans in the country to exercise their right to vote?
Unfortunately, that appears to be the case. We certainly see a lot of the old tricks that were put together during the Reconstruction period that can affect election outcomes. Now, that is another bone of contention. A number of people say, well, research shows that even when these various measures are taken that appear to be racially loaded. For example, not just the voter ID, but also the polling places where they're located, the ability to vote by mail. All of these conveniences, if you will, tend to have an impact on the ability of a lot of people to vote. And I think the preponderance of evidence shows that the Republicans tend to benefit from making it harder to vote. That's a general statement, but in general, though, the thrust of what Republicans are after would make it harder for people to vote. The Democrats want to make it easier. Now, some folks on the other side say that making it that easy opens you up to possibility of fraud. And voter fraud we've seen has been greatly exaggerated as far as the actual occurrences of it. We've had a big debate going on as to whether or not every measure should be taken to avoid fraud. And now that debate's been further muddied by the insistence by President Trump's campaign that there was rampant fraud. And now I think we're getting right at the heart of what democracy is all about. When we're at loggerheads over who should be allowed to vote and who shouldn't.